Okay. So we have everything. I'll call the Personnel Committee meeting to order for March 21st.
And I'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order.
Yeah. Here. Here.
Hazard is here.
Bizarre is here.
Hey, sorry.
There he is. Okay, welcome. And then roll call for Finance. Here.
Here. Here.
Okay, first item of business is approval of the minutes from the February 22nd Personnel and Finance Committees meeting jointly. Can I get a motion for approval from Finance?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. I'll second it.
For personnel. I'll make motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor for any further discussion for personnel? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And for Finance, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, miscellaneous increase in scheduling working hours from part-time senior services case manager. Tammy, do you want to, anything to add? Do you want to talk about it? Can you hear her? Jeremy?
Jill, your mic might not be there.
I think I heard something. There it goes. Okay.
So after the city budget process for this year, for 2023, Dane County came back and gave us some additional funding for our case management program. And we actually have had an open vacancy in case management in that 20-hour-a-week position. I believe I wrote in here from March or from September of 2022 to we just recently filled that 20-hour-a-week position. So historically, it's been a difficult one to fill. And also, because we received some additional funding from the county, $11,349 to be exact for the case management program, we would really like to, and the money is meant for the program. So we would like to increase those hours to 25 hours. And I thought it was important in my summary here for you to talk a little bit about what the case manager is and what that position does. And also at the bottom, I included a little summary of how many clients are we currently serving. So there are two parts to the case management program. One part is the county part, which basically says you do have to be 60 years of age or over, and you need to live, we serve Middleton and the town of Middleton. That's what we're contracted for. However, we also, as you know, receive City of Middleton funding. So we don't always go directly by the criteria for the county. We look to serve Middleton residents who are 55 and over. So the numbers that you're seeing are the documented numbers on the bottom, and those come from our county clients that we currently serve. So I gave you a little history of the program. We have records, of course, dating back all the way to 2008. And you can see how the program has grown from year to year. 2022 was our highest year in terms of having unduplicated clients. So what that sort of means is that we have right now 198 clients on our caseload. Now, somebody stays on our caseload for up to a year. At any given time, where our case managers are working between 20 and 25 clients at a time. We might not be serving each of these 198 every single week or every single day, but until they've had a full year where they've had no service, then they drop off of the client list. This is happening statewide, and I would guess probably nationwide as well. The case management program is no longer the simple program that helps people with benefits. I would tell you this last couple of years, we've seen more intense cases that sometimes take months to resolve. Cases, I think, that cropped up also during the pandemic when people couldn't get out and they were socially isolated. Perhaps in life, they had addictions or problems, and those problems were really exploded for people during the pandemic, and it hasn't lessened since. So I think we're still seeing some of the effects of that. But one case that we had a year or so ago took about 8 months to resolve, and that was continual work, really getting that person to a place where they could be safe. So I provided also some information in here for you about the history of Dane County case management funding. And I went back to 2018, and you can see that they have been very generous, and it is a very nice partnership that we have with the county. And of course, in 2023, we did receive this increase that we are requesting be used for additional hours to help us meet the demand in this area.
And that should continue. That same increase would be what you would expect again year after year.
I can never predict that.
Right?
Historically, as you can see, we have received more.
Yeah.
It is a process, and senior center directors are involved in that process every year, which is, I think, really a positive thing. So historically, it has increased.
Mhm. And I don't know if I heard you correctly. How long is the time that when somebody's not receiving services before they drop off? It's
1 year.
1 year. Okay.
Yes.
Tammy, I had a question about, to what extent do you coordinate with mom on providing services to seniors? Because I know they have obviously the food pantry and the clothing center.
They
but-
do. Yes, they do. There is some back and forth between us and mom. Sometimes their case managers will see folks that we've already seen. So there is some communication there. There's also referral for services there as well. So there is a back and forth relationship.
Okay. And then, I support this change. I'm just curious about the numbers. So the revenue is going up by $11,349.04. But then according to this table, if I just look at the total wages, which includes retirement and FICA, that adds up to $10,243.95.
I tried to keep it under that 11,000 caps. 25 hours was the highest I could go
Mhm.
and still keep it within that funding formula. So I didn't want to go over
Okay.
the 11,000 that we had allotted.
And the new hire is willing to go up to 25 hours?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great.
Alder Kuhn had a question.
I just wanted to make a statement that I appreciate everything that our case managers do. They've been working very hard, as you showed over the last few years, with the caseloads going up. And like you said, after the pandemic, I appreciate their patience, especially on those long cases. 8 months is a long time to help someone. And if I remember correctly, it was on a weekly basis, if not more so.
Yes.
I do appreciate that. And when it's time to make a motion, I'd like to make a motion.
Dan had a comment. Dan, did you?
I have a question.
Yes.
This $11,000, is it typical to be granted more money this time of year? I guess my question is, when will you know for next budget cycle whether you will continue to have that or not have that? Will you know when you set your budget for next year? It just seems like an odd time.
Well, we actually got this shortly after this into 2023, but the position has been open and vacant. So I have not brought it before you until we decided that we were going to fill that position. I won't know till later on. Sometimes it is actually, sometimes I do know towards the end of our budget cycle, and I usually communicate that to Bill. This year it came back a little later, and I think it came back because they were debating on how much additional funds the 12 focal points were going to receive. But usually I do know that towards the middle, or I'll say to Bill, we've been told, possibly this is going to happen, or possibly that's going to happen. So I never really know for sure date wise when that's all going to be settled. But the county, we just are beginning to have some county budget discussions, very preliminary. We're asked about this time of year, what we think our priorities would be for next year. So we've started looking at our priorities at this point, but that is the very beginning of the process.
Thank you.
Luke, do you have any questions?
I do
Comment?
not.
Anything? Okay. All right. Any further discussion?
I guess the only question I have is for Bill. So the action tonight, in addition to approving the increase in scheduled working hours, I mean, we're approving the change in the budget, correct? The addition of the 11,000.
Yeah, we will. And because the position has been open, there are also some savings from that vacancy. I think that we have room within the budget that we could proceed, and we could follow up with an amendment to formally identify when we know what the start date is and have more specific numbers. But we want to bring the concept before you at this point.
Okay, so do you need anything other than show of support from us?
Well, this is a material change to the position. So the funding and the execution of it follows this, but we do need a formal motion and approval for the change to the position. We ended the last budget cycle and entered this year with the position specifically as a non-regular part-time permanent position. This would make it a regular permanent part-time position. And so that is a material change. That's why it's before you tonight, is to approve that, change the personnel slate and change the position. Along with that comes the funding requirement.
Okay, so tonight you need a motion to approve this material change to increase the scheduled working hours for the part-time senior services case manager. And then at a later date, we'll formally amend the budget. Okay.
I have
Correct.
I have
Go
one more
ahead.
question for Tammy. Since this position has been open for some time, do you have like a backlog of cases that need to be worked? I mean, will this person have to come in and, well, they're starting already, but will they be required to fill about, take care of some backlog?
Yeah, I think the largest, the way the backlog occurs really is just that follow-up and communication with the clients. There are already designated clients for this person.
Okay,
And our current case manager has been kind of, filling that void as best she can.
okay,
But our new case manager will then begin those in-depth conversations with people just to reestablish the relationship. Part of what's really important, and part that we don't always talk about, is our seniors develop a really close relationship with their case manager. So it's really hard on them when we have turnover in that position, because our case managers sometimes are in their home. They know their families. They're there when somebody wants to call to talk. It's a very personal relationship. So there has been a gap, obviously, in that time of having the position be vacant. But I think Jill Schonenberger, I don't know if you realize Jill has been with us for 16 years and really does a beautiful job and really knows how to manage each item as it comes up, and she'll be a great resource. Although the person that we have filled this position with is highly qualified. She's studying to get her PhD right now. So, and has worked as a case manager here in Middleton.
Oh, okay.
So,
It's wonderful.
Well, in the-
Hence my question, which is why I have no issues with this, but I just want us to go in it with our eyes open, that if the funding doesn't continue, what we're committing to is an extra $11,000 in next year's budget in one way, shape, or form. So I want everybody to be aware of that, that's all.
Yep.
Because historically, that's a pretty big increase.
it is, yes. It is a big increase and it was highly advocated for.
Okay.
So, but again, you are correct. We can never predict the future. All I can tell you is what the history has been up until this point.
And
Yes, Alder King.
for awareness at the Aging Commission yesterday, they talked about how some of the cases are referred. So if you go over that for us, Tammy.
We get referrals from a lot of different places, including the city. The police department has referred cases to us. We have been referred cases from EMS, from fire, even from the code enforcement area. Sometimes we can offer perhaps a little bit lighter hand and also offer different funding sources to assist with that. And we've had an increase in that during the pandemic. We did, that's continued. I'm really actually pleased to see that happening because it's a great way for city departments to work together and utilize the services that we have. So I'm really pleased. We've tried to educate other departments about what it is they do, what we can and can't do. We are not a 24-hour emergency service. So sometimes people think that we are, but that is really not how the program was designed to operate. Referrals also come sometimes from other seniors, sometimes from apartment complex owners, building owners. They can come from a whole variety of ways. Sometimes they come to us through the meal program. Our case managers do assessments for the Meals on Wheels program, and then they follow that person. And the volunteers going out to the person's home with a meal. Sometimes they'll come back and report, there's a problem with Jane or Tom, and could you check in? And so it all sort of ebbs and flows together in our department and out to other departments as well.
Great. Alder Kuhn, since you're a member of both committees, would you be willing to make a motion for both?
Yes, thank you. I'll make that motion to approve.
And
I'll second.
I was gonna say you're on both.
There you go.
Okay, then there being no further discussion, all those in favor for finance of approving this material change to the position to increase the scheduled working hours, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Per-
opposed? Okay.
For personnel, aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Miscellaneous number 2, change community services manager role to building and facilities manager. Jim Scholander.
Yes, is the microphone working?
Yes.
All right. If you don't know, or many of you probably already do know, we lost our community services manager a week ago Friday. We've been working on this position or reformatting our department in this position for probably close to a year, and we had we were working through Brian, and even before that, when Mike was here, we were trying to reformat our department and change this position to a facilities manager. It's a slow process. We weren't ready to bring it up this quick, but with the loss of 2 personnel now in the last few months, it's really turned our department upside down. And we figured now would be the time to change the department and bring somebody on. We know it's not the most opportune time with our budget, obviously, but now I'm short 2 personnel, and we figured this would be the the best time to bring on somebody new that could take over this role and run with our facilities management.
Jim, do you have an egg timer going in the background?
No, I'm sitting on the side of the road. Somebody just stopped to see if I was all right.
Because we hear something that sounds like interference of some kind, but
Oh, yeah, no, I turned the truck off and everything.
okay, just checking. Be safe out there. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the material change to the role?
It is a material change to the role. It includes redefinition of the role's scope of position, scope of responsibility, and it also includes a redesignation of the grade from a grade 7 to a grade 8 based on the reevaluation of that position, both considered against salary basis provided to us by CIVMIC for the area, and a direct evaluation of the responsibilities of the position against the old responsibilities of the position.
Okay, and then also the very last sentence says that the separate code compliance officer position at the current 20 hours per week would then be created from the community services officer at the same 2023 rate projected. Can you explain that? Is that
Yeah, so
a second change that we're being asked to make?
there is no significant change there. Mark Walter, who was the community services officer, performed that role. He retired recently. The only change to that is the change to the name to more specifically align the name of the title to what he's actually doing. So code compliance officer is the role that Mark Walter held. As we look for a new code compliance officer, we want to ensure that the backfill has both the ability to enforce the parking and other police related codes and some of the building and residential codes. So we felt that the change to the duty name would allow us to better identify that and post for it. But there is no change to the projected budget encumbrance for refilling that position. It just posted today for us to attempt to refill it, but at the same rate that was projected that Mark Walter would have earned in that position.
So there's more hours here. So this,
There are no more hours in the code compliance officer,
no, that's a 20, right?
20.
But this position with the buildings and facilities manager, that's increasing 20 hours. Is that correct?
But that position was always 40 hours and it remains 40 hours.
Okay,
The old community services manager, which was a lesser scope and a combination of some code compliance and some buildings and facilities work, was a 40-hour position. The material change here is that the position has been redesignated building and facilities manager. The scope, the level of responsibility has been specifically and significantly enhanced. And based on that evaluation, it would increase to a grade 8, which increases the salary encumbrance, but the hours remain the same.
so we got the code compliance, but there's also the parking enforcement and
That is part of the code compliance officer, parking enforcement and residential code violations and complaints. Those are all part of the code compliance officer, the role that Mark Walter played when he was called the community services officer. The only change to that is the name of the role.
okay,
The
so
change to the community services manager to a building and facilities manager is a material change. There are no material changes in the change from community services officer to code
they'll
compliance officer.
still do the electronic signs, the fingerprinting,
Yes,
and code compliance in
yes,
the 20 hours allocated.
yes.
Wow. Okay.
Alder Kuhn?
Thank you. I support the change for all the reasons that you said, both the title and the upgrade in pay. I just wanted to clarify, is there a reason we didn't have a personnel meeting tonight? Do you have any input on that?
Really,
Discuss
the
about
reason
that.
is that simply for simplicity. There really is no other reason. It's a material change to the position, but along with that material change to the position, there is a financial impact. And so changes like both of these that are presented tonight are best dealt with a Personnel and Finance meeting jointly so that we are in alignment across those two committees with the importance and interpretation of the change. To do it in separate meetings introduces a ton of translation and interpretation issues that slow what is already a pretty urgent process for us to fill this position.
Yeah, I understand that, and I respect you for that urgency, especially as we're down a lot of employees across the enterprise. I just want us to make sure that this doesn't become a pattern, because as things keep changing, I think it may behoove the city to go over some of the personnel things just before we get to the joint personnel and finance. And I agree, we should be on the same page, especially with the finance and the pay increase. So thank you for your explanation.
I had a question. Who will the supervisor be for this buildings?
The supervisor for that is Jim Scholander, the inspection manager.
Okay. Because I think there's a reference in the description to supervisors, and I wasn't sure what that meant. And then I'll just ask Jim, I don't know what this role normally entails, but I did notice that minor custodial services and window cleaning and painting are included. Is that common?
Yes, now I'm being asked to move. Evidently, I can't park on the side of the road.
Okay.
So I got to back up. Hang on 2 seconds, please. I'm sorry.
All right. And Alder Ramsey has a question too when you're parked again.
Well, it's for Bill.
Oh, it's for, okay, go ahead.
The financial impact, we say that we can cover it through the vacancies for 2023. Any idea what the impact for 2024 will be then?
It depends on where the new hire will come in compared to where Dan Cotter's salary was. So we don't have that specific number yet. I believe there's a 6% separation between grades. So I think we'd be looking at roughly 6% of the salary range, which, do you have those annual numbers, Andy?
Yeah, so Dan's current rate was below the midpoint for the range. Since we generally do not hire above the midpoint, we generally hire somewhere between the minimum and the 25% mark. And if it's necessary to obtain a candidate between the 25% mark and the midpoint, the projection for the highest possible increase within the year is about $15,600. That would be the difference for the remainder of the year between Dan's current salary and the midpoint of the range. If we had to offer the midpoint to secure someone into the position, that would be the increase going into next year, plus any COLA increases and any market increases that would be a part of the normal personnel budget update going into the next year.
All right, I am back.
And I see it does say in the memo that we need to integrate this into the budget for 2024. So we'll be mindful of that without you, Alder Ramsey, later this year. I had a question. Are tools provided to this person by the city?
Yes, we have a full complement of tools and equipment and supplies. We have all of that already.
And a vehicle, correct?
And we have a truck as well. Yes.
And no certificates are required or preferred?
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
There is no license per se, like my inspectors are all required to be licensed. From a facilities manager standpoint, there is no license. There's some programs and classes they can take, obviously, to understand the job better, but there's no certifications for that title.
Okay. All right. Well, would somebody like to make a motion?
This is Olson. I'll make a motion to approve for finance and for personnel.
Great.
Alder Keen, second that.
All right. We're being very efficient tonight. Okay, all those further
Okay.
discussion for finance? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 For personnel, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Quick update on recruiting and retention efforts, and some of these comments will deal directly with some of the questions that you've already had about budget underlap and under execution and where that money is going, where it's coming from, how we're trending. So since the beginning of the year, the city has hired 15 employees. We've promoted 3 employees. We've transferred 1 from one department to another. You'll notice that some of the numbers going to talk about are not exact matches to that. That has to do with the fact that some of these vacancies carried over from one year to another. So it's very difficult to line up those numbers exactly. Currently, we have 1 internal, or out of that, we had 1 internal only posting. The remainder were all open postings to the public and to current cities. We have currently have 7 active and open recruitments and 1 inactive recruitment. That inactive recruitment that is sitting out there is the police officer recruitment. Typically, they generate a eligible list, and that eligible list is drawn from for an extended period of time, up to 6 months or more, that they work off a single eligible list. That eligible list, they've already worked to offer 1 new officer from there. And so they'll continue to work through that eligibility list. And once that is exhausted, then we will run another posting for that police officer position. Currently, we have not added any positions, anyone into the 2 new positions, and we have 1 open position. So we're down 3 police officers, but we are working through that eligibility list. That recruitment is complete. It's just sitting there. One of the things that I have seen from the beginning of this year is that we have moved to a need to advertise continuous, open until filled. We have previously almost always set a beginning and end window for positions, accumulated candidates, and evaluated them at one point. When we see things like the case manager that goes multiple months unfilled, streets crew positions that go multiple months unfilled, it became really unwieldy to close unfillable positions and then reopen them under a new position. So a number of the positions now, more and more, are getting posted under a continuous until filled. As we get a group of applicants, they're evaluated, they're forwarded to the hiring manager for evaluation, and groups of them are sent to interview, and we may or may not select somebody from those. And along that process, hopefully, if someone wasn't selected, we continue to have applicants apply and we move through that cycle again. We have seen significant general trends that administrative positions and support roles that are full-time receive significantly higher volume this year than we have seen in the past. So, and I'm talking about the near past through our downturn in recruiting, particularly in the library, particularly in public works, where we are advertising for administrative full-time positions with benefits. We have great pools to select from. Where we have very low volume of applications is in the streets and operational positions, streets, utilities, park crew members, police officers. All those positions we've seen low to almost no volume. Only a few applicants, 24 or so applicants for the last police, where when I first started 3 years ago, we saw 162 applicants. And prior to that, we saw 300 applicants for police officer open positions. So that remains very difficult. And we are seeing absolutely zero volume for LTE or summer seasonal work for any of our operational departments. I can tell you that we are receiving applications, but we're receiving significantly less interest in seasonal positions, particularly in the parks area too. So we are not alone in the general city operations for that. Recreation is having a difficulty filling positions, and that will likely continue. Application volume is, as I've just said, application quality remains moderate to poor across all the positions. We're seeing applicants that don't necessarily have all the qualifications and applicants that are submitting applications in general that are of poor quality, missing elements, or elements uploaded a couple of times in lieu of the actual elements requested. All of these things are not unique to us. in constant communication with our peer cities on these issues. And I can tell you that all the peer cities in the Madison periphery around our size and slightly larger are having exactly the same issues in exactly the same areas with volume and quality of candidates that are applying. That's not to say that we don't have high quality candidates applying. It's to say that generally the average quality of applications is decreased. Diversity in applications has been very strong for library positions and relatively strong for administrative positions. Diversity of applications for our operational positions remains very poor for diversity. We have seen two applicants apply under a Veterans Preference Program. Neither of them have been were the final selectee, but we have seen two apply under that. And as we move forward to some of the interview process coming up, we've seen a candidate apply with a requirement for direct disability accommodations that we will provide in that interview process so that they're able to successfully interview. So we're doing everything we possibly can to increase our diversity and support differently abled employees to join our staff. Some things that we just have not seen in the past. So the new Veterans Preference Program is working, although not generating as many as I would like to see. And the other elements we are seeing are being very successful. The bottleneck is not related to where we are advertising. And oftentimes we get the question, well, where are you advertising? Are you reaching out to diverse candidates? We have seen that 95% of our applications come directly from our city's webpage, from when we send it to CIVMIC or governmentjobs.com, where our NeoGov advertisements automatically go. Very rarely do I see applications generated from any other source, no matter how many sources I send it to. The other source that we have begun using pretty regularly is wiskjobs.com. So as a municipality and a government agency, we can post to that. And that is distributed to anyone that is looking at state positions. We're able to run parallel with those state agency positions. As a note, I mean, that's how I found my position here in Middleton was it had been advertised on wiskjobs.com. So that is, other than the current channels, the next best channel for us to advertise for fills. Talking about the personnel budget. So there was some questions. Yes.
Before you get there, I just want to applaud you for your efforts in your recruitment. These are very hard times to get resumes, and your breadth of locations that you're posting to, I see those fruitful efforts, and I appreciate it. You know, I know that you said that we're not getting a volume of diversity in your candidates. However, in my experience, it takes 2 to 3 years. So having that starting point speaks volumes to me, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you very much. There were some questions on budget. So beginning very late last year, I began taking a look at under execution of personnel dollars based on turnover and churn, something that we had not done previously. And going into this year's budget, Bill projected $65,000 of personnel churn dollars into the budget proactively. As of right now, including the positions that were generated from the levy new for this year, we're running at approximately $144,000 under execution. That means that those dollars are left there to handle things like the increase in pay for the difference to the facility manager, to the addition of hours to the case manager. Of that, roughly half is aligned with the new positions. We've got a judgment from our audit agency that there may be some complications in using those. We still are at 72,000 and some change of under execution. So that's $60,000 of projected under execution as of right now in March has easily been surpassed, and we will surpass it several times over for the balance of the year, given the amount of turnover that we have and the difficulty to match up a departure date exactly with the start date. We continue to work on equity in hiring and in salary. I will just say that when we identified those issues and we changed our compensation program to one that deliberately works people through their ranges, we have significant improvement in the evidence and appearance of disparate impact across our salary ranges. I'll also say that we have several positions and several staff members, from senior staff members to technical experts, that are significantly below where you might expect them to be. And were it anybody anywhere else or anyone else, they would be a flight risk to other agencies for where they are positioned. And these are some things that, as we go forward, we'll have to look at as far as recruitment and retention issues. Our personnel budget, as we approve it for the year, is relatively an inflexible process. We may have to look in the future at injecting some more nimbleness to the process if we're going to continue to fill positions regularly. That's my assessment and comments for you as we look at this in the future. It may be or may not be possible, but it's my responsibility to advise you on what I see. And so this is an update on recruiting retention as we have gone from the end of this year up to this end of this first quarter.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian? Any comments for Brian?
I would just say good job what you're doing. So I know it's very difficult to recruit people, but I would have hoped that more of them would want to come to Middleton. I mean, it's a great city, so.
Great.
Hearing none, we have personnel to adjourn. Anyone make a motion?
This is Alder Keen. I'll make that motion.
And I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I was adjourned.
All right, so Finance Committee will continue. I think I saw Larry on the screen there. Hi, Larry. Hope you're feeling better. Okay.
There tonight.
What was that?
Sorry, I can't be there.
Well, we understand.
Oh, so he's not feeling well?
That's why we have this.
You know, this
technology.
is good practice, Larry. You should rotate this every, the year, maybe. Good tech practice.
Okay, so moving on to the first item of business for the Finance Committee, the minutes of the March 7, 2023 Finance Committee meeting.
Also, I'll make a motion to approve.
Ramsey, a second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Next is the audit of the bills to be paid. And Bill, do you have any updates for us?
Yeah, there's one addition for Cenex fleet fueling. The amount is $17,347.65. This is our monthly bill, just the timing came in late.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for Bill? Hearing none, who would like to make a motion?
Ramsey will move.
All right, so Ramsey's moving, I'll second. All those in favor of approving the audit of the bills to be paid with the addition of the $17,347.65 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the bills are approved. Resolutions, we have one. Resolution 2023-17, final assessments for Pleasant View Road reconstruction, and this comes to us from Public Works.
Ramsey will move to approve.
This is Alder Keen. I'll second.
All right, discussion.
There's a lot of money there.
It is. I had a question actually for you, Larry.
Yeah.
Okay, and the question is this: if you look at the first paragraph under now therefore be it resolved, I was just wondering from a legal standpoint, is it beneficial to include a qualifier like currently or temporarily in this sentence? No, where did it go? Maybe that's not the right paragraph. It's the one where it says that basically that the town's portion, for the properties that are in the town, that portion will be considered the city's contribution. There it is. Costs allocated to property outside the city limits will be considered a part of the city's portion, but may be assessed or collected in the future. It seems to me that we will assess that in the future, not just a hypothetical. And so I'm wondering, should we say will currently be considered a part of the city's portion?
Well, the issue here is a statute, section 66.0707 sub 3, in which provides that properties outside of a municipality that benefit from a project can be assessed. And by that, I mean can be assessed currently, but there's no collection unless the town where the property is located, or it could be in another city or village too, consents. And we don't have that consent. There is the possibility that if these properties never annex to the city, they will never be, they will still show as having deferred assessment on them, but it's completely uncollectible by statute, except under the circumstances specified in this paragraph. So if they choose to annex, they'll get assessed. Or if the town changes its mind, I suppose anything's possible, then we could assess those properties that are benefiting, because there's what, 7 or 8 of them in Sean's report. So there's a good number of properties, but we simply cannot legally collect from them, but we can levy the assessment now. And it really doesn't matter how many properties there are today, tomorrow, next week, next year, because we are assessing all those properties within the Pleasant View Road area on both sides from Black Hawk to University Green. And so the area is specified now, but we simply can't collect on those.
Sure.
Is your objection that it's not concrete enough? Is that what your objection
Yeah,
is?
I understood
Yeah, the
what's going
process.
on. Yeah, with us not being able to collect it now. All I was getting at is if I were someone who opposed letting the city levy this, the special assessment in the future, I would look at that sentence that's highlighted and be like, oh, well, the city said this would be part of their this would be their contribution. And all I was suggesting is if we added currently, that does make it clear that right now we're doing it this way, but in the future we'll assess. But if Larry, if you're happy and no one else is concerned about a smart person and challenging us in court in the future, I'm good to go. I did note that there are a couple references to the Middleton Times Tribune. I'm not sure, but I think Cross Plains is a part of the official title of the newspaper. I just mentioned that, not to be too Middleton centric. But if that's not a problem, I see nothing too concerning about this arrangement. Alder Ramsey, did you have a comment?
No, I'm good with this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Any,
just to be completely clear. The assessments, if this resolution is adopted by the council and the usual procedure is followed by publishing it and mailing it to every property in the assessment district, we've done everything we should or can do at this point in time. Obviously, it might be appropriate to notify the town residents that to draw their attention to this language so they don't get alarmed about this, because we're not trying to do something we can't do. But we do need to levy, and this acts to levy those assessments, which is the important step.
And all the town residents will get that levy. We'll mail them. Will they know what the levy is?
Yes.
So that answers your question,
so it just notifies them,
that there's a levy.
but it will not imply in any way, that notification won't imply in any way that the town residents need to pay that money now.
Correct.
Correct.
We can't get it unless they
Yeah.
ask to be annexed in.
Right. All right. Okay. Well, if there's no more Question or discussion? All those in favor of approving resolution 2023-17 final assessments for Pleasant View Road reconstruction signify by saying
I think we
aye.
need a
Aye.
motion.
Oh, did we not get a motion? I have Ramsey and Kuhn.
Oh, I apologize. I did not get
That's
that down.
okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We got your back,
Okay,
Bill. We
yep,
know
thanks.
you're filling in for Brian. Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to agreements, we have three. First one is the agreement with City of Madison for Metro Transit Service.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll make that motion to approve.
This is also second.
All right, discussion.
We are saving money. That's always a good thing. So
I noted, it looks, then again, sorry, I noticed these things. Robert Burke was my predecessor in this. I noticed it refers to Mark Opitz. It's got a slight problem with his title, but it's probably no big deal. It says he's the city planning and zoning administrator, but I think he's the city planner and zoning administrator. And I had talked to Bill earlier today in preparing for this meeting, and that would be my preference sometime this year for council to set up a separate fund to hold on to the state aid that we're getting, since this is a change in how we're getting it directly instead of Madison holding on to it for us. So
Would that be different than the fund we set up at budget time? There was a small carryover in the transportation. There was just a small amount.
Yeah, so currently transit is funded in the city's general fund, and you can carry over and designate money within the general fund. The other option to consider would be making a special revenue fund, since we'd be receiving a large revenue directly from the state, and then that would be automatically carried within that fund in future years.
And I thought there was a small amount we were going to.
you're
do
right.
this,
I
yes.
recall that now that we did, I don't think we segregated it, but we flagged it as, specifically for transit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because we figured we're going to have more transit needs.
Yep. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agreement with City of Madison for Metro Transit Service signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to agreement with Marco for IT related services.
Olson, I'll move approval.
I'll second it. Discussion.
Just one, since there's a penalty for paying by credit card, I hope the city will always pay them by check.
We invoice everybody on that, so we always pay by invoice.
Oh, there's Drew.
You do pay by check.
That is something that we regularly do. We will ensure that we pay by check or ACH if vendors have a fee for credit card. We do try to use credit cards where that's more efficient and there are not fees.
Okay.
And Drew, I assume you tried to negotiate that fee away?
Yeah, that's just their standard contract as far as fees for credit card services. So, and in fact, the actual current charges that we incur in the new contract, we're actually going to be saving a little bit of money with this renewal and everything. So we are actually working out ahead. So.
Okay, and I noticed the schedule of products was not, it said to be delivered. Did you get that?
So the schedule of products, I mean, the schedule of products itself, this is a renewal, the schedule of products is going to remain the same except for some additional managed service tools, which I believe is in the Marco executive summary. It addresses some of that, which is some next generation endpoint protection, some additional email security, and some what's called SIEM, Security Information and Events Management. And that actually puts us above and beyond what exceeding the standards of our cybersecurity requirements for insurance carriers. So we're actually ahead of the game by doing this. So
Great.
So Drew, I have a question. So overall, you are quite happy with their service, or is there anything which you want to change?
no, I feel like we have a a very good relationship with Marco, especially based upon the personnel challenges that we have in the municipality and everything. They complement the in-house staff very well and everything. So we meet on a quarterly basis with their CIO team. We have a team of support staff assigned to us that assist us with day-to-day operations. So yeah, we have a great relationship with them.
So this is a 36-month contract, knowing how the AI is going now, GPT-4, all of those things. So you would have if you want to make any changes, we would be able to?
What do you mean by changes?
The artificial intelligence, where the new system are coming, which do a lot of this stuff. I don't know whether they would do what Macro is doing, but if we need to bring any of that stuff or bring any changes, we would be able to.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's right now in its infancy. What I would say about things like ChatGPT is they complement the current IT environment. They're not going to supplant the entire IT environment right now. So I think they might. That type of technology will make IT technicians and engineers who know how to use it properly a good tool for them, but it's not going to supplant them. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agreement with Marco for IT-related services signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you, Drew. Moving on to agreement number 3, a change order with TRC Environmental Corporation for supplemental phase 2 environmental site assessment to request no further action from DNR for 2610 Parmenter Street. And this comes to us from staff.
Mrs. Olson, I'll move approval.
I'll second. Discussion?
Is this the last piece of this then?
Thank you, Abby, and please make sure the microphone is on.
Costs a lot of money to get no further action, doesn't it?
Can you hear me?
Well, I can hear you, but I'm right here. So okay.
So from everything that our consultants at TRC have told us, from their initial conversations with DNR, they think that this is going to be all that is required. There is a very small chance that the DNR would require additional testing, but the results that we got in this last round of testing were about as good as we could have hoped, which is, we came and we requested authorization from the Common Council to flush the sanitary sewer system within the building and then to go in and test the sub-slab sampling again. And this time they did the same testing. They also tested indoor air quality because there was a concern that that chemical could have volatilized and been affecting indoor air quality. And they did not have any exceedances in this last round of testing. So every indication is what they thought would take care of the problem, which is flushing out that clogged sanitary sewer system, did resolve the issue. And they believe that the DNR will provide the closure letter.
Is there any time frame on? Did they give you any time frame on when that would happen?
So they did give us a timeline. They think that conservatively it could take until the end of June. They put 2 to 3 weeks buffer in that timeline. And later on the agenda, we'll be discussing the purchase agreement and the extension of that.
Other questions? All right, then all those in favor of approving the change order with TRC Environmental Corporation for supplemental phase 2 environmental site assessment to request no further action from DNR for 2610 Parmenter Street, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. You guys have it. Moving on to bids and quotes. We have 5. First one is award of bid to JB Johnson Brothers and the amount I think it should be not to exceed $110,102 for the annual concrete repair project. This comes to us from Public Works.
Mrs. Alder Kuhn, I'll make that motion to approve.
Mrs. Olson, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'll just say I'm really thrilled that the Pheasant Branch sidewalk is going in. That's exciting. Sean, can you tell us what's going to happen with Murphy Drive and Forsythia Street? And also, how do properties get on the list for our annual concrete repair?
Let me answer those in reverse order.
Okay.
Because the second one's easier. We have one of our engineering technicians literally walk around about an eighth of the city in any given year. So he develops a whole list of deficiencies, which are measurable criteria, which are listed on our website. So when people call and say, why is there a pink dot on my sidewalk? We can point them to the answer with pictures. So that's kind of the how that happens. And there's a whole process for then, what we do with that information and notify people and everything. The first question about what do we do with these bid alternates for Forsythia and Murphy. Murphy, I think, is the more pressing of the two because we have bus routes about to change in the middle of June. And Abby's been in contact with the owner out there. Part of our issue is unless we can get the money fronted to us, we don't have authorization to spend money we don't have budgeted, so we can't recoup it through an assessment. But if they're willing to front the money, then we could pursue that as a change order. And so that's a little bit up in the air right now, but we would at least get this contractor pinned down on this scope of work while continuing to consider that as a change order.
Okay.
Upon Forsythia, I think that just needs to be separately budgeted and rebid next year.
Okay.
That said, Kiva will still be building their sidewalk. We just won't have the gaps filled in.
All right. Thanks. Any other questions for Sean? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the award of bid to JB Johnson Brothers in an amount not to exceed $110,102 for the annual concrete repair project signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 2, award of bid to Farner Asphalt Sealers in the amount of $164,703.83 for bridge deck maintenance. This also comes to us from Public Works.
Mrs. Alder Kuhn, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. I'll second. Okay, any discussion? No questions for Sean, no discussion. All right, all those in favor of approving the award of bid to Farner Asphalt Sealers in the amount of $164,703.83 for bridge deck maintenance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 3, acceptance of proposal from, is it Cahoy Group in the amount of $134,174 for well number 4 rehabilitation, also referred to us by Public Works.
Mrs. Alder Kuhn, I'll make that motion.
So it's not second.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I just wondered, Sean, did we have, so Strand indicated they've had no experience with this particular company, which is from Iowa, but they are the lowest responsible bidder. Have we had experiences with the others?
We have
Wisconsin
had some
company?
experience with others. We did get some supplemental information from this group, and they seem well suited to do the job. They have the right people, they have the right equipment. I thought Strand had some experience with Cahoy. So I'm misremembering that perhaps.
Yeah, it says right
Oh,
there.
it says they
Strand.
have not had. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as far as we know, they've got the right people and the right equipment.
Okay.
At this time.
All right, well, as long as you're confident, I'll be confident. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the acceptance of proposal from Cahoy Group in the amount of $134,174 for well number 4 rehabilitation signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 4, rejection of bids for Pheasant Branch CIPP pipelining, also from Public Works.
This is Alder. Can I make that motion?
I'll second that. Any discussion or questions?
So I have a question for Sean. Now we are rejecting this the second time. Is there any possibility we have some other solutions? How are you going to handle it? I mean, someday we got to do it.
Someday soon. Push that button till it stays on. Right, so we do have to do it. We did reach out to a company that does a slightly different process that would end in a good product, but they expressed some interest and then didn't bid on it. So we're going to touch base with them again to see what it was about the project that made them somewhat interested, but not enough to give us a bid on it.
Okay.
And then I got just a random email, spam, most people would call it, about a different kind of product that would do this sort of thing. So I asked Tom Weber just to touch base with them too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question on the Terrace Avenue, the holding tank. Is that something, Abby, we're going to move to the CDA? What you thinking? It's in the memorandum.
Yeah, I haven't spoken with Public Works about this recently.
Okay.
But it's good to know. I see it now here that that's not being included. I know that Tom had come up with a pretty inexpensive solution that we had included in the CDA budget to try to align the system
Right.
that was leaking.
So I was wondering now, is that would be the lining similar to what they were talking about for the pipe, right? And then this would be, okay.
I'm guessing it's similar, and it looks like because they're rejecting the bid, that would also not be included. So I'll. speak with Tom.
That's a much smaller project, is the
Yeah, he
cistern.
gave me a cost estimate. I think it was only going to be about $2,000 to line the cistern.
Yeah, and a smaller company might be able to handle something like that. Okay.
I'll check.
Great, thanks. All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of rejecting the bids for Pheasant Branch CIPP pipelining signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on. Acceptance of proposal from IPM Institute using grant funds for Energy Efficiency Navigator Program. This comes to us from the Sustainability Committee, so I will make a motion to approve.
This is Alder. Can I second that?
Thank you. Any questions?
And this is all grant fund for healthy babies is how this is going to be.
Yep, the Healthy
And I know
Babies Bright
Kelly's
Futures
already
grant.
Secured that and she's on top of it. So.
Yeah, looks good.
Yep.
Money is there, so.
All right. All those in favor of approving the acceptance of proposal from IPM Institute using grant funds for Energy Efficiency Navigator Program signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to miscellaneous. We have a few items. First one is solid waste collection options for Pelletieri contract extension.
This is Olson, I'll move approval.
This is Alder. Can I second that?
All right, discussion. And now, just to be clear, when you were moving approval, are you approving the proposed contract extension?
Approved, yes.
Okay.
And I think there were a
And
couple. oh, go ahead.
inherent in that,
Yep.
couple of choices that
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
can
Okay.
give some direction on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's-
I'm just making a note. Okay. So I'll say I wish there had been a little more creativity in following up on my suggestion that we offer residents one opportunity or a time during the year when they could exchange their big 95-gallon bin for something smaller. But I don't want to create any delays, so I'll relent on that. But I certainly wasn't thinking that we would let people do it every year so much as we would have a time every year when people who hadn't previously done it could turn theirs in. I do see a $45 fee for the replacement, but according to the website right now, there's a one-time $15 fee to have us switch your carts at the curb. So why the significant increase, I guess, is what I'm wondering. And also, how long does our current agreement extend? Because if it's going to go up, if it's going to triple in price, I will let my constituents know that it's now or never if they want to take advantage of that $15 rate.
You want to handle that, Danielle?
Yeah.
All right. Somebody who knows.
Stay up here though for support.
I'll be right here.
Thanks. Then you don't have to go so far. You can have my chair. Hi, everyone. Danielle Pelletieri. I'm one of the family business owners. Thanks for having us tonight. Just real quick, I'd like to just, thank everybody for the strong partnership that we've had taking care of the city of Middleton and their residents since 2010. We really enjoy serving the Middleton residents and the community itself. We're grateful that the city values the same things that we do when it comes to great service and excellent customer service, and then also sustainability. I love that. That's really important to us. It's one of our core values is to be good stewards of our environment, and City of Middleton is rocking it. So keep up the good work on that end. So yeah, when it comes to, do you want me to kind of dive into some of the questions?
Yep.
So currently, to answer the question about the cart swap out fee, so the current rate is very, very, very low, which is fine, but it needs to be more at a market rate. And that's what the $45 charge would be. And bear in mind that that cost is for us to bring carts out to the resident's home to exchange that cart and then take back the other cart, clean it, re-inventory it, or recycle it in the event that that's needed. There is also an option for residents to bring us their carts at our offices by appointment, and there is no charge then for that cart exchange. So there is a fee for curbside service versus being able to bring the cart to us. Did you want me to kind of dive into the two options we did provide on the cart exchange program, or not get into that?
I don't think so, because staff is recommending not going with them. And it would take, I think, too much time to work out something that would work.
Sure. Okay.
Like I said, but I am interested in knowing how long does this current one go?
End of the year.
Okay.
And so the end of the year is the current term. In the proposal, you'll see that the card exchange fee at curbside is $45 for 5 years, and then $48 the second 5 years. So there's not going to be like, oh, in 5 years, it's going to be $100. But again, most of the communities, if you actually look at that pricing, have been at that pricing for a number of years. So there has been a benefit to Middleton residents with the curbside pricing at that $15 rate. It really doesn't cover the cost at all for what we're having to do for that. You miss anything else?
Well, and I would add only, in addition to the cart swap, one of the big administrative things that happens is Pelletieri maintains a database of who has what size carts. So we always know how many are in service and what they are and where they are. So that's not insignificant either. The other thing is, I don't know that we talked about it previously, but our current contract goes to the end of the year. I don't know if upon execution of a replacement agreement or amendment, the new terms of this one would be intend to take effect, but I will point out that the per cart price of this extension is actually lower than we're paying right now.
For the service.
Right, so that's the per cart collection
For
price
recycling and for
for
trash.
both. Yep.
Larry or Matt, can you weigh in on the point that Sean just made about if we approve this contract, what happens to the terms of the current contract? Seems to me like until we finish that contract.
That's what I would typically expect. I'm kind of batting last minute, so I didn't have a chance to review it to see if there were other express terms otherwise, but I would typically anticipate a new contract would take over from the old, but it would depend upon, you could certainly do it the other way if the language of the contract included it, but.
Yeah, and I think that there's not the actual replacement contract language in the packet tonight. There was clarification about these options, and then
Okay.
the formal agreement would come back.
That's a good point.
So we're
So-
approving the concept for.
We're
the
approving the
final.
concept and we need to talk about the term. It sounds like we're
10-year
leaning,
term?
leaning towards Sean's suggestion to go with the current system for the replacement carts. And then the letter of credit was that the
Correct.
third
Yep,
item?
exactly. And then we can put that into an agreement form, whether
Gotcha.
it's an extension or whether it's a replacement. And it might be a little cleaner if we just do a full replacement contract at this point. But that's not before us yet.
Okay.
Lisa, I don't want to lose track of the downsizing. There may be different options, like if we did like in a springtime, once a year or something where we could do a truckload of them and take them back and bring back other ones, or something different that we can still, because getting the smaller carts really does help. I mean, saves people less garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to lose track of it.
Okay. All right.
But that is one of the ideas we talked about, Kathy, just internally at the staff level. And part of the problem with that can be keeping the database updated as there's a swarm of people trying to just get their new carts and get out of there.
For some reason, I don't anticipate that there'd be a lot. I could see a dozen or so people at a time. I'm just thinking out
I
loud.
think the second problem that we face is I don't know how many people can transport their carts to a location and then get their new carts
That is
to
the
their
problem.
home.
And that's where if the city could help with that process, like we did it once a year and said, okay, we're going to do a swap for a day or something. And but I don't want to lose track is all I'm saying. So,
okay. Danielle, are there other options you can propose to us? Of things other cities are
we
doing?
actually looked at, is that on? Can you hear me? We looked at this a number of ways. There's a pretty big, there's a lot that goes into inventorying carts and making sure that we have what residents are going to need. So like when you looked at the two options, it was the option that in the event that the city wanted to take on the cost of the cart exchange cost, that would probably be what I would consider to be less expensive to the city overall, should the city want to bear those costs, versus having the 1 year time frame for everybody to have that exchange program, which was the option 2. I think a lot of what's already been said is what you run into is that it's important to us to maintain a good database so that if there is an issue with, hey, my wheel popped off or my lid cracked, I need to know that when that call comes into customer service, what size cart you have, so that when I dispatch somebody to come and repair your cart or replace a wheel or a lid, I know what size parts I'm bringing with me or in exchange of a cart. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of different moving pieces there. Grace was actually really insightful this morning in the shower. She told me she thought about a report we could run to look at this a little bit more in depth. So I'm in quote, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like with the analysis that she was able to run quickly, there was about 0.7% of the households did cart exchanges in 2022. So it amounted to not more than 70 households, was it total?
47 households.
Oh, excuse me, 47 households. Okay.
76 carts.
76 carts. Yeah, my number's confused. So, similar to what you were saying is I don't see it being a huge ask from residents. And I think that, there could be, now again, we just looked at that information this morning. So if there was something that we could look at differently, I think that we may be able to. It just, again, it's like, it needs to be planned. We need to know ahead what that information is, what size carts, who the people that are looking for the exchanges are. And we've really found that most residents like to have the capacity available to them with the larger carts because of special events or birthdays and holidays and all the rest. That doesn't necessarily, we don't necessarily think that because there's a larger cart, people are going to buy more stuff to throw in it. And actually, when you have a smaller trash cart, for example, which we would all think, well, that makes more sense because we want to throw away less trash and recycle more. What happens is that when there are those capacity issues, we find that the recycling gets contaminated, or excuse me, the trash gets contaminated with recyclables if there's too much stuff. So it can go both ways. And that's why when we have these discussions, it becomes a 45-minute hour conversation just internally before we even talk to finance, because we look at what would be the best way to really give options that make sense, that will help everybody. And because there isn't a huge amount of activity on the cart exchange side, what you find is it's the new homeowners. Let's say, somebody buys a home and they move in with a family of 5 and they want larger carts. Actually, the statistics that Grace pulled showed that Wasn't that right on the recycling side? There was the most was bigger recycling carts, but your standard is already the 95 on the recycling side. So if somebody had downsized because there was just, one or two people in a household and then a family moves in, then they're actually looking for the bigger capacity. So I'm going to go along with whatever you guys decide. I just know that I get the idea of sustainability, thinking smaller trash cart. And then I also realized, small garages. I lived on Northbrook for over 10 years and had a single car garage and 2 95-gallon carts. But to me, it was worth having the ability to have that space when I needed it, even though I didn't need it all the time, for the capacity issue. So yeah, I think that the two options we gave, we really tried to be creative in answering the question and providing options. But when you look at all of the details that go into it, those two things were the way that seemed the most practical for us to be able to offer the city the card exchange program.
Thanks. Well, it's all about offering options. And in the interest of time, I think we need to wrap up on this one. Alder Ramsey, did you? Okay. So term, are we good with 7-year or exercise the 10-year option?
Larry, yes, go ahead, Larry.
Larry, be
Yeah,
mindful
I
of the
would
time though, because we have 9 minutes and we have a closed session.
I would strongly recommend that you not eliminate the letter of credit or reduce it. Only because, not that Pelletary is in any way weak, but I have personal experience with a solid waste provider that went belly up, and suddenly the community had no one to pick up their garbage. And they were hit with a demand by a bank to send our monthly payments to the bank instead of the trash collector. So this doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's a terrible thing. So I think where it is right now is exactly where it should be.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
I don't know, what's the feeling for the 10 or 7? I could amend my motion.
Sean, do you feel strongly 10 or 7? Did the Public Works Committee have a recommendation?
I think the way the proposal's written, we can start with 7 and you can roll it into a 10-year within the first 18 months.
Okay.
So that's really up to you. I don't have any hesitation going straight to 10.
I don't have any hesitation going straight with 10. We lock in the pricing for 10 years instead of 7.
I agree.
It's one less thing to remember to do in 18 months. Okay, I'll amend my motion to include the 10-year option.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the concept for the contract extension to have a 10-year term, keep the letter of credit requirement, and keep the current system with the carts. And perhaps in the
That is
future, we
it.
can figure out another way to help our residents downsize. Okay,
That is my motion.
all right, great. And you second
Yes.
that? All right, so all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. And now, with apologies to all the people who are sitting in the room, we need to convene into closed session. Can I have a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Solson, second.
All right, all those in favor of convening into a closed session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
And at that, since Matt is there, I will.
Matt, okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
Matt. for covering
Thanks,
for me.
Larry.
Bye, Larry.
Make sure.
I'm not sure how that. Not too bad. Yeah,
The only thing we could have done is to see if this was.
it was a disappointing result for my meeting out in the town of Pleasant Springs, but
Now that everybody kicked it.
wasn't exactly surprising either. So you can't win them.
Disappointing.
I was just help